Your questions are answered. This is Observer AM.
It's now 23 minutes after 8 o'clock in Antigua and Barbuda. This is Observer AM, and we'll move straight into our next discussion with our next guest. Jonesy Hillhouse's writing has been described as honest, real, poetic, moving, and lyrical. Her culture is at the heart of her writing. Obvious is the writer's ear for effective characterization and narrative that stays true to a Caribbean island experience. Joanne graduated with a degree in mass communications from the University of the West Indies in Mona, where she also took various literature and writing courses and was taught and mentored by future Jamaican poet laureate Mervyn Morris. Joanne's relationship with storytelling grew from a love of reading as a child and evolved as she scripted plays, poems, and short stories during her school and through university years. She entered the world of work as a print and TV reporter, but never lost sight of her dream of becoming a published author. Writing and reading remain her twin passions. In 2014, Joanne placed second for the inaugural Burt Award for Young Adult Caribbean Literature in 2014. Her manuscript, Musical Youth, has been published to critical and reader acclaim by Caribbean Reads. Musical Youth is read in schools in Antigua and Barbuda and in Trinidad as well. Her earliest books were Boy from the Willow Bend and Dancing Nude in the Moonlight. Dancing Mood in the Moonlight, 10th anniversary edition, among other writings. Always experimenting, Joanne has also ventured into the children's picture book market with her Caribbean fairy tale With Grace and the aquatic adventure Lost, a Caribbean sea adventure. The latter has been described by Kirkus Reviews as an appealing book, all the more so for being based in real life. Her voluntary activities include the Wadadli Youth Pen Prize, which she founded in 2004, the Cushion Club Reading Club for Kids, performances in the Vagina Monologues and When a Woman Moans, staged by women in Antigua, literary showcases, Word Up, among others, literary workshops like Just Right, etc., and also competitions, including Antigua and Barbuda's Independence Literary Competition. In 2017, she has been nominated for the 2018 Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award, the world's largest children's literature award. And I just want to say good morning and welcome. Well, that's quite a body of work there, and I think she might say she's just getting started. Joanne Hillhouse, welcome to Observer AM.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Honored to have you on the program this morning, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. How did you feel when you got the announcement, or you got it was announced, or you got the information that you were nominated for this award?
Well, I felt this week, for the first time, I think, felt real to me because I checked my mailbox early this week and I got in the mail the letter from the Astrid Lindgren Committee and the brochure with my name listed among the many other nominations from all over the world. So that was pretty cool to have to actually hold that in my hand, see nominated candidates for 2018, and to see Antigua and Barbuda as the first listed country. Because all of this as well is also repping Antigua, so it's pretty cool to see our name there among there's 60 countries, 200 and something nominees, and we're right there, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool too. Now, what or who has influenced your writing over all these years?
My writing is influenced by life. I couldn't listen to all that you said because it's weird listening to people read stuff about you. But when you started and you spoke about staying true to the Caribbean experience, I think what I write is very much from the core of who I am, what my experiences have been, not in a literal way, not in a biographical way, but in terms of the energy and the culture of Antigua and Barbuda, of Otters, Antigua, where I'm from. And as we transition in the world, as Antigua becomes more of itself, reflecting that, capturing that. So my writing is influenced by life.
Right. Do you think that most good writers do take a lot from their experiences and their observations of their environment in which they exist or grew up?
I think so. I think no matter what genre you're writing in, I mean, my latest book is a children's picture book. It has fantasy elements. It's called Lost Caribbean Sea Adventure, and it's about an Arctic seal and a jellyfish, and there are other underwater creatures in it. But at the same time, it's influenced by that story that happened some years ago when Wadadli, the Arctic seal, found himself stranded in the Caribbean Sea, and we had to figure out, as Antigua, how we're going to get him back to his natural habitat. So, I mean, even things like that can influence, a story, something that seems, because a lot of it comes from, the what if this happened, then what, and then you sort of, kind of, and for me, writing a lot of the times is trying to make sense of life, trying to figure out how I feel about things, trying to understand what's happening. And I think for a lot of writers, it's probably the same thing. It's that whole thing of sort of wrestling with life.
All right. Now, during your writing career, you were mentored by future Jamaican poet laureate Mervyn Morris. How important was it for you to have a mentor in your life?
Oh, it was very critical. At the time that I was at University of the West Indies at the time when I met Mr. Morris, and he was teaching there at the time, and they had a mentorship program where they literally, it was like a pilot program, and they assigned you to a mentor. I didn't know him at the time. I was assigned to him as his mentor, and he was also one of my lecturers in creative writing. And so he was one of the earliest people that I would sort of tentatively show works to and get feedback on. Not the first. I mean, I had mentors at, for instance, Antigua State College. I've had unofficial mentors at different points in my life, but he was one of the people who was giving me critical feedback and on the work. And it's important to get that, to not always be told, this is good, you're great, whatever, to be told, no, this needs work and here's why. And he was also the one who kind of set my career in motion, in the sense of the first workshop I participated in as a writer outside of the Caribbean, he recommended me for. He recommended me to and recommended me for. It was the Caribbean Fiction Writers Summer Institute at the University of Miami, and I participated in that the summer after I would have finished my courses at UWI. And then at that workshop was when I started working on what would later become my first book, The Boy from Willow Bend. So there's a whole domino effect that's happening there from having him as a mentor who would do things like talk to me, read my work, take me to plays, that sort of thing. Things expose you to what the arts are about, that sort of thing.
All right. Do you care to name any of the mentors that you would have had here in Antigua?
Mentors that I would have had, the first person that leaped into my mind is actually Giselle Isaac. Giselle, when I was still working as a print reporter, Giselle and I met during out my days at the Antigua Sun. She had just published Considering Venus, which is an amazing book. People should check it out. And she was my editor at the Sun, and I would show her my creative works as well. I remember showing her the manuscript, for instance, to Dancing Nude in the Moonlight. I remember taking it to her in like a paper bag and, tell me what you think of this kind of thing. And Giselle's the kind of reader that if she's reading, she's going to give you it's going to come back heavily inked, red inked with this and this and this and this. And was also the kind of editor that challenged me out of my comfort zone as well. So, she's one that comes to mind. At the State College, one of my English teachers, Calvin Holder, he's one of the people that I used. But in fact, both my English teachers, Mr. George, Calvin Holder, I would show works to them. So different people at different times. And sometimes a mentor isn't necessarily a direct relationship, like you don't have to physically know the person. If you're inspired because I'm inspired by the writers that people like Jamaica Kincaid or Althea Prince, who Antiguanwriters whose work have inspired me. In a way, that mentorship exists because I'm learning from them as I read their work as well. So, and Althea I've also had a direct relationship with. So different people at different times.
I totally understand. Now, who's responsible or was responsible for your nomination for this most recent award? Do you know? Well,
I'm not sure how much I can speak on it, to be honest. I'm not sure what is allowed to say on it. I'm grateful for my name being submitted, and I've said my thanks privately, and I just publicly thank them again, and I will let everything come out when it does, if it does. I mean, it's a long shot, but I'm happy just to be on the list.
Okay, understood. And what would winning this award mean to you, though? Suppose you do win. You come out at the top of the heap, so to speak. Just a thought, right?
It's an amazing thought. It's this writing life is such a struggle sometimes. I'm not even going to pretend. It's especially when you live in a place like Antigua where writer, what's that? Get a real job, and writing is all I've ever wanted to do. And sometimes it's a curse in the sense that, well, God, if you gave me this to do, then what am I to do with it? And so I wake up every day finding ways to do it and to do things with it and to make a living at it. And a lot of the times you're working with very little nurturing in the soil. We don't have funding for arts really in Antigua. We have to scrabble to find ways to make the art happen in spite of that nurturing. And so any little validation is manna to the soul, and also sometimes money to the pocket as well, which is also important for a writer and for an artist. I remember when I was placed for the Burt Award, I submitted that manuscript, Musical Youth. I wrote literally on the fly and submitted it on a whim, and it came back as the second manuscript in the competition, and from that I got a publishing contract to do it, and that created other ripples in my writing career in terms of invitations to do other things. And so winning these prizes opens up a whole range of opportunities potentially. I mean, we never know what really is going to happen. Oftentimes these prizes come with some kind of purse, so that's good for an artist as well. But also as a writer, putting your work out into the world and hoping to reach more people, hoping to give your characters and your stories life and to represent the stories of your people. I mean, it's a platform that few people can really hope for. So it would be everything, and it would be another day to get up and continue doing the work as well, because the work doesn't stop and the urge to write doesn't stop.
All right. Now, the Astrid Lindgren is one of Sweden's most important authors. Astrid Lindgren argued in favor of peace and democracy against all forms of violence. What message is most important to you when people, particularly our youth, read your work?
I think for me, the idea that our stories are valid too. One of the things I do with Wadadley Pen, with Wadadley Youth Pen Prize, the program I started back in 2004 to nurture and showcase the literary arts in Antigua and Barbuda. And one of the sort of cornerstones of it for me, well, two things, is that the stories that come through Wadadley Pen have a Caribbean aesthetic, and that people feel free to write about anything, to not feel censored, to feel liberated through the process of creating, to feel the cathartic experience of it. And so to realize that our stories and our voice have values, that not only the stories that we grew up reading from other places, including the Astrid Lindgrens of the world. I mean, we read Pippi Longstockings and all these books that she's written, or we've seen the movies or whatever, and we think, oh, those stories are interesting, those places are interesting. Well, guess what? We're interesting too, and we have something to say too. So I think that's one of the things I whether deliberately or not, because I'm writing, I'm really just trying to tell the characters' stories. But when I look back at it, this idea that our stories matter, we matter, and that we can write ourselves into the bigger narratives of that are being told out there in the world, I think that's important for us to recognize. And for young people, because, for instance, what Ali Penn is focused on young people, this idea that you have a right to use your voice, to express yourself. And I think that that's important, whether you become a writer or not, that you understand that your voice matters.
All right, we're going to take a pause on that note. It's now 23 minutes to 9 o'clock. We'll have some messages from our partners, and we'll continue the discussion with Joanne Hillhouse. 20 minutes to 9 o'clock here in Antigua and Barbuda. This is Observer AM. We're having a discussion with Joanne Hillhouse and her recent nomination for the Astrid Lindgren Award. That author being one of Sweden's most significant authors, as we just discussed a few moments ago. Now, good literature gives the child a place in the world, and the world a place in the child. I think I need to read that again. Good literature gives the child a place in the world, and the world a place in the child. Your thoughts on that statement?
Oh, it's absolutely true. Good literature gives the child a place in the world, and the world a place in the child. I mean, if you think about, well, certainly for me, in terms of the latter part, the world a place in the child, growing up reading about places I had never been. Some I still haven't seen. I mean, some that exist only in my imagination, and some that I could never visit because they don't exist. And yet they all found a place inside of me. They all found a way to sort of enlarge in my experience of the world, not just the physical world, but also in terms of our common humanity. And in terms of giving a child a place in the world, I mean, we know that one of the things that we do, even as adults, is sort of we see our projections of ourselves, and it kind of helps us to understand ourselves as well in the world. One of the things that I know, for instance, when I did the book with Grace, which was my picture book that came out last year, which is a Caribbean fairy tale, when I started realizing that the book was becoming a fairy tale, was this idea of sort of subverting all the conventions of the fairy tale. So on the cover, for instance, you see this dark-skinned black girl with wild plaits, natural hair, and her fairy, the fairy that is her sort of fairy godmother in the story. And I mean, how often do little black girls get to see that, to see themselves in fairy tales, So literature does all of that, potentially. It helps us. I remember reading Pippi Longstockings with my nephew once, and Pippi Longstockings is lifting a horse, and he was like, a girl can be that strong? Of course, nobody can lift a horse, but yes, of course a girl can be that strong. This idea that you see that there's so much possibility inside of us, and that we see, like imagination is sort of untappable and unstoppable. I think it's a glorious thing. So I think that literature does give us a place in the world and gives the world a place in us. It's a beautiful, beautiful, magical, and ever-expanding thing.
You've just taken me back a few years anyway. Moving the discussion along. Are you satisfied with the reading and writing capacity of students in Antigua and Barbuda? Or perhaps put a different way, are you optimistic, comforted by what you're seeing in the literary space in Antigua and Barbuda?
Hi, I'm Joanne Hillhouse. I'm a writer. I'm not a education official. I'm not in the system in any way, so I haven't done that sort of research and analysis. I hope that somebody is doing that sort of research and analysis. What I do from outside of the system is I've tried to be engaged with programs that can build that capacity. I mean, Reading Club, the Cushion Club, Reading Club for Kids, which I volunteered with for many years. I used to meet every Saturday with children, me and Cedric, who's the main volunteer, and we would just read to them, read with them, play reading games with them. And we met all kinds. We met kids who were very slow readers, and we met kids who just loved to read and were always volunteering, and you realize that that's the power of a good story, to engage them in that way, to help them to push themselves a little bit further. I think it can help in all subject areas, because if you're to not only comprehend, if you're to be not only able to read the words but to comprehend what you're reading, imagine what that could do to you in any other subject area that you're studying. Sometimes you don't necessarily remember or memorize, but if you can figure it out, then that is part of passing these big tests that we want the kids to pass and so on. So reading is invaluable, and I think if we put a lot more energy into not reading as chore, but reading as fun in the home, in programs in the communities, it will have a amazing ripple effect. But as to what the statistics say about if we're reading enough and so on, I can't speak to that. I do know that some of the most enthusiastic fans of my work that I've met have been young people. They, when they love a story, they love it, and they don't have any qualms about meeting you in St. John Street, in High Street, and telling you, "Oh my God, I love this book, and here's why." So, to me, we haven't begun to realize the potential of stories to actually kind of excite the imagination and improve their learning. So,
and most importantly, stories that are of ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, about self, I'm not a purist in that sense. I read anything, I didn't get to read enough about us when I was growing up, so I think I'm sort of resetting the scales in some of the choices I make now. But I love and read anything. So to me, anything that grabs their attention. But I think it's actually very powerful to see yourself in literature and to realize that your life and your stories matter. So I do think that part we need to do a little bit more. But read anything, just read.
Jonesy Hill, thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning on Observer AM. Congratulations, and I wish you all the best. Certainly hope we have an interview with you as the winner.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It's now 8:45 in Antigua and Barbuda. We'll continue Observer AM with our community segment.